You mentioned an interesting point, which is you wanted to talk about things that concern the world. You have something to say. So, and then you mentioned the danger of kind of the vines back in the day. So why do you think rock bands these days, or perhaps don't talk about a lot of those issues?
I think it's mainly because journalists don't give them the opportunity to. I think we force people to ask us those questions because we put it in our songs.
Right.
And you have no choice to kind of, when you ask me about what a song means, I can tell you the meaning of it, and I give myself an opportunity to talk about a subject that I'm passionate about. Whereas I think we've kind of got ourselves in this loop now where there's so many bands, like just yesterday, was it yesterday? Or Monday, back home, some of our friends in bands like Wolf Alice and Superfood and Peace, they all put on a concert to help refugees, like Bands for Refugees it was called, and all of my friends in that scene are passionate about the same things that I am. It's just journalists don't ask them about it because they don't write about it, and I think it really frustrates them because maybe they don't want to make political music, but it doesn't mean that they don't care about everything that's happening in the world. So I think for me it's about changing that philosophy. Like our manager used to be in a band in the 80s, and although the majority of stuff that they wrote about wasn't political, they would spend like an article 2 pages out of 3 talking about politics and 1 page talking about the music. Nowadays it's kind of like, it's about what hat you wear or what pop star you've shagged the other week. Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of got to this stage of celebrityism now where we're so distracted from the importance of life that people feel like they have to conform to that narrative. And I think it's kind of interesting because we get that question quite a lot. And when we first started getting asked it, I felt like, I'm not in any way saying that this is what you're trying to do, but it felt like journalists were trying to like goad us into like slagging off other bands for doing for not saying anything. Right. I think it's quite a loaded question, but the reality is that I think most of us agree on the same principles and care about the same things. It's just we can be more direct because of the content of our music.
If we look at the world then now, because we are in a tumultuous time, so there's plenty to talk about. How do you decide what to talk about? Do you have certain specific topics that you prefer, or?
I think it's knowledge is key. If there's something that I'm knowledgeable about and feel like I can have a conversation about with people and have a debate with, there's something where I feel comfortable and not out of my depth. Although I'll always be the first to admit that, like, I love it when people challenge me and prove me wrong or change my perspective. And I think that's really important. The key thing with whatever we do is about provoking debate in the real world as well, like not just shouting at each other online, because that's kind of the reality of the political climate now, is that people just use their computers to say things that a lot of the time they would never say in reality as well, and a lot more violently than they ever would in person. And I think we really need to kind of get back to that idea of sitting around the dinner table or at school or in the pub or wherever and actually having conversations and also like letting people that don't share our views have time to tell us why they don't share our views and learn from that. But in terms of song topics, I think it's just, a lot of the time the music kind of just happens to be coincidental. Okay. Like I might be writing something and then there'll be a particular news topic or something that really stands out to me that I just feel like I can write about it at that moment and then bring it into a song. And sometimes with our songs there's kind of dozens of different, like each line might refer to a completely different topic.
Sure.
And I think the record, like our album, is sort of a amalgamation of all those things, and it kind of, for me, it sort of says this is where we are as a species right now.
Right.
And I want people to kind of take away many different meanings from it and just stir that conversation and get people talking again. I think is the whole point of it.
Well, you mentioned an interesting point because welcome to the wonderful world of Berners-Lee. It's kind of what you talk about because I wrote the line down, help me Berners-Lee, I'm bored, conspiracy, I'm yours. So is that what you talk about, where kind of the way the media is today, you can just go online and publish your opinion but not really engage in conversation? Is that kind of...
Well, there's several aspects to it, I guess. There's, the point of that song is kind of, people use the word conspiracy basically to kind of put doubt into people's minds. So there might be something that comes out about a politician or whatever, and then their campaign will just call it conspiracy to kind of make people have doubt about it, even if it's sort of actually a fact.
Right.
And now the thing is that when we express any opinion online, you have to have an opinion. You can't really sit on the fence, so you have to agree with one side of an argument, even if you're unsure. As soon as you start talking about one side of the argument, the other side of the argument will heavily criticize you for that. So then you're kind of in a funny position where you kind of don't want to say anything at all, or if you do, you kind of have to go whole hog and stick to your values and be prepared for people to criticize you for it. But then at the same time, the algorithmic nature of the internet now, a lot of the time we only see a projection back of our opinion. So the reality is that you're not actually influencing anyone on the other side of the argument, because you're only preaching to the converted. And then the overlying thing of that is it's only as long as people's newsfeed. So like whenever you say something like that in a couple of days, it's irrelevant anyway, because people have moved on and they're talking about something else.
Right.
So it's really odd now, because I think we kind of feel like by expressing ourselves online, we've done our duty. In reality, it doesn't matter in a couple of days, but we never talk about it. In the same way that now we don't talk about what we're doing in each other's lives, because we see it all online anyway. We know when someone has a baby or when someone's on holiday or whatever. And for me, it's quite interesting because I stopped social media about a year and a half ago now. So I haven't had Facebook for that long, and I only have the band's kind of social media aspect, so I'm only ever writing about what we're doing and what people are saying about us and that kind of stuff. Or like, I will express my opinions online as much as I will in reality through the band's account. But now when I meet friends, it's very much like pre-digital era. So like I'll meet people and they'll have had a baby and I won't even know about it, but it's exciting to me because I actually have something to talk to them about.
Right.
Whereas if when I used to know what they'd done, it was kind of like, well, I know what you've done anyway, so what's the point? And I think that's kind of very true with our opinions, and it's particularly if we disagree with someone. So if we see someone post something online, we know what their opinion is, so we'll just avoid the subject rather than actually talking about it and trying to influence them in some way, or equally them influence us in some way. So we have to get out of this digital world because it's destroying the reality, and it doesn't fucking exist at the end of the day,
Well, it's interesting because this ties in with what you mentioned earlier. The album is about where we are as a species, so to say. So, and this is going to be very difficult to sum up in a couple sentences, but where do you think we are as a species? Are we doing okay?
I think we're at a real sort of crossroads at the moment. I mean, we've moved very far forward as a species, but for me it's kind of like, it's really saddening that it almost feels like we're turning back on ourselves. So you had the civil rights movement and the equal rights movement and the gay rights movements of the late 1800s right up until the 90s, and we got ourselves to a point where, although there's still a lot of inequality worldwide and there's still a lot of things that we need to work towards, we did overall, certainly in Western society, have a better platform for people of minorities or of the female gender or whatever. And for me, votes like the referendum in Britain or Donald Trump in America is kind of us backtracking on everything that we started, and a lot of those people that fought for us and died for us would be turning in their graves right now, I think, if they could see what's happening in two of the most kind of prominent societies in the world. And there's more and more that are following suit, you know, like thankfully Austria didn't go that way. We've got the French election coming up next year, and that's really terrifying. And there's elections all across Europe that are kind of very pivotal in the next 12 to 18 months. And we could get to the end of that and have a majoritively right-wing society. And that really scares me, because it's kind of, it takes that liberal touch to push for those rights for all. And the weird thing now is that the right-wing movements of the world are kind of using the same language that the liberal movements used in the past, and manipulating the public into thinking that their philosophy is better for the people, when in fact it favours the rich and it favours the elites. And the reason they're doing that is because they're just lying to people, you know, they're lying through their teeth and saying that it'll be better for them. And unfortunately, liberal mentality is to not to lie to the people and tell them that, yeah, we're going to raise taxes probably like £2 a year to everyone, but that will impact society and make it more equal. And people can't see past the statistical side of things now. And the only sort of thing that we have, the thing that fascinated me the most about the US election was the transparency of it all. You literally had two candidates that in the past would have been able to hide away all of the scandals, but now because of the internet it's kind of like very much just open for everyone, and it's about who can kind of rise above their controversy. But I guess the main concern for me is that, like, you know, we need to change the educational system is kind of my major concern at the moment. Certainly within the UK, like, we're not even taught the basics of politics in school. When a child leaves the mandatory state education at the age of 16, they should be informed enough to know what their vote means and who they're voting for, and just the basics of the way it works. They should have a greater understanding of what's going on in the world and not feel isolated and scared by minorities, and embrace the culture and brilliance that immigration brings. And all of these fears and anxieties stem from right-wing media manipulating the extreme uses of religion to terrorize different Western states. And unfortunately, that's winning at the minute, you know. And I think that's something we need to change. We need to sort of go back to the roots of our forefathers and push for a more equal world again. But at the minute, it's kind of feeling very difficult. And the whole point of our record, the album titled Dumb Blood, is that we are a silent generation, and what we want to do is wake people up, you know.
I'm unfortunately out of time, but thank you very much for your time.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.